Part 1. The stars stretched endlessly across the blackness of space. Tiny pinpricks of light that made the universe feel both vast and lonely. The research vessel, Aurora, drifted silently through this infinite expanse, its sleek metallic frame glinting faintly under the distant glow of a nearby star. Inside, Captain Daniel Hayes sat in the command chair on the bridge, his sharp blue eyes scanning the screens before him. He was a man who carried himself with quiet authority, his broad shoulders and steady demeanor inspiring confidence among his crew. The Aurora had been traveling for weeks, its mission clear but its destination uncertain. Humanity had spread far beyond Earth, colonizing planets in distant star systems. Elysium 9 was one such colony, a small but thriving settlement perched on the edge of explored space. It was a place where farmers worked fields under alien suns, children played in red dirt parks, and scientists studied strange new life. But now, something was wrong. A soft beep interrupted the hum of the ship's systems. Lieutenant Ryan Cole, the head of security, glanced up from his station. His voice was calm but firm. "Captain, we've received a priority transmission from Earth Command." Daniel nodded, leaning forward slightly. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life, showing the official insignia of Earth Command. A moment later, a stern-faced officer appeared, her expression unreadable. She wasted no time with pleasantries. "Captain Hayes, this message is classified. You are to share it only with your senior staff. Effective immediately, you are ordered to enforce Directive Omega." Ryan frowned. "Directive Omega? What's that?" The officer ignored the question. "This directive has been enacted due to recent incidents involving extraterrestrial species. From this point forward, any harm inflicted upon a human child by an alien entity will result in immediate and severe retaliation. This is non-negotiable. We warned them harm a human child, and death will follow." Her tone left no room for argument. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge silent, except for the faint hum of machinery. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He didn't need to ask what the directive meant. Humanity had always been protective of its young, but this was different. This wasn't just protection, it was a promise of vengeance, swift and merciless. Dr. Laura Bennett entered the bridge moments later, her lab coat swishing softly as she walked. She was a tall woman with warm brown eyes and curly auburn hair tied back in a loose ponytail. As the ship's xenobiologist, she spent most of her time studying alien ecosystems, but even she could sense the tension in the air. "What's going on?" she asked, looking around at the somber faces. Daniel gestured for her to take a seat. "We just got orders from Earth Command. Something big is happening, and they're not taking chances." He replayed the transmission for her, watching as her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. When it ended, she let out a slow breath. "That's extreme. Do they really think it'll come to that?" Ryan crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. "They wouldn't send us a message like this unless they thought it might. Whatever waiting for us at Elysium 9. It's serious." Laura hesitated, then nodded. "If there's trouble brewing, we need to be ready. But we also can't jump to conclusions. Not every alien species is hostile." Daniel stood, pacing slowly across the bridge. "Agreed. Still, we can't afford to be careless. Earth Command isn't issuing warnings like this without reason. Let's prep the team and get ready to disembark as soon as we arrive." Hours passed as the Aurora approached Elysium 9 through the viewport. The planet came into view, a mix of lush green forests, sprawling deserts, and shimmering oceans. It looked peaceful, almost idyllic, but appearances could be deceiving. When the ship finally touched down near the colony's main settlement, the mood was tense. Colonists milled about outside, some casting worried glances toward the horizon. Children laughed and played nearby, blissfully unaware of the weight hanging over their parents' shoulders. Daniel stepped off the ramp first, followed closely. by Laura and Ryan. Two engineers, Alex Carter and Megan Scott, brought up the rear, carrying equipment slung over their shoulders. A middle-aged man hurried over to greet them. His name was Carl Harris, the colony's mayor. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cool breeze, and his hands trembled slightly as he extended one to shake Daniel's. "Thank God you're here," he said, his voice cracking. "We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" Daniel asked, his tone calm but probing. Carl hesitated, glancing nervously at the surrounding buildings. "It started a few days ago. People reported seeing strange creatures near the outskirts of the colony. Tall, insect-like things. At first, we thought they were just curious, maybe harmless, but then," his voice trailed off, and he swallowed hard. "Then what?" Laura pressed gently. "Then kids started disappearing," Carl admitted, his shoulders sagging. 3 so far. No signs of struggle, no clues, just gone. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Daniel exchanged a glance with Ryan, whose hand instinctively moved closer to the plasma rifle strapped to his side. Laura's face paled, but she quickly masked her reaction with determination. "We'll find them," Daniel assured Carl, his voice steady. "But we'll need your cooperation. Tell everyone to stay indoors until we know more, and keep an eye on the children. Let them wander off." Carl nodded vigorously. "Of course, anything you need." As the mayor scurried away to spread the word, Daniel turned to his team. "All right, people, let's move fast. Laura, see if you can gather any intel on these creatures. Ryan, set up a perimeter around the colony. Alex, Megan, start scanning for anomalies. We don't have much time." The group split up, each member focused on their task. Laura knelt beside a patch of disturbed soil, examining tracks left behind by whatever had ventured close to the colony. They were large, clawed prints unlike anything she'd seen before. Nearby, Ryan barked orders to a group of settlers volunteering as lookouts, positioning them strategically along the edges of the settlement. Meanwhile, Daniel surveyed the scene, his mind racing. The warning from Earth Command echoed in his thoughts. Harm, a human child, and death will follow. He hoped it wouldn't come to that. But if it did, he knew what he had to do. For now, though, there was work to be done. Somewhere out there, 3 frightened children were counting on them, and Daniel Hayes wasn't about to let them down. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the colony of Elysium 9. The air grew cooler, and a faint breeze rustled through the dry grass that surrounded the settlement. Inside the makeshift command center, a repurposed storage unit near the edge of the colony, Captain Daniel Hayes studied a map spread out on a folding table. His fingers traced the perimeter of the area where the children had last been seen. 3 red dots marked their locations before they vanished, all near the same stretch of wilderness. Dr. Laura Bennett leaned over his shoulder, her brow furrowed as she examined the map. "These disappearances are too close together to be random," she said softly. "Whatever took them knows this area well." Ryan Cole stood nearby, adjusting the strap of his plasma rifle. His sharp green eyes scanned the darkening landscape beyond the colony's borders. "If these things are smart enough to avoid detection, we're going to need more than just footprints to track them down." Daniel nodded. "We'll start at first light. Until then, everyone stays alert. No one goes outside alone." As the team prepared for the night, whispers spread among the colonists. Fear hung heavy in the air, mingling with the scent of burning wood from a nearby fire pit. Parents clung to their children, unwilling to let them out of sight, even for a moment. Some settlers muttered about leaving the planet altogether, while others argued that fleeing would only make them easier targets. Just as the group finished setting up watch rotations, a young boy named Ethan approached the command center. He couldn't have been older than 10, his sandy hair sticking up in messy tufts. His face was pale, but his voice carried a hint of urgency. "I saw something," he blurted out, looking up at Daniel. Daniel crouched down to meet the boys' gaze. What did you see, Ethan? It was big, Ethan stammered, glancing nervously toward the wilderness. It had legs like sticks, really long ones, and its body was shiny, like metal or something. It moved fast, but it didn't make any noise. Laura exchanged a glance with Daniel. Sounds like one of the creatures Carl mentioned. Where did you see it? Ryan asked, kneeling beside the boy. Ethan pointed toward a cluster of jagged rocks jutting out of the ground about half a mile from the colony. Over there, near those rocks, I was chasing my dog, and I saw it standing still, like it was watching me. Then it disappeared into the ground. Into the ground, Daniel repeated, frowning. The boy nodded vigorously. Yeah, like it sank right into it. Like the dirt swallowed it up. Ryan straightened, his jaw tightening. Tunnels. That's how they're moving around without being spotted. Daniel stood, his mind racing. If the creatures were using underground tunnels, tracking them would be nearly impossible without proper equipment. But they couldn't wait until morning. They needed answers now. All right, he said firmly. We'll check it out tonight. Laura, grab whatever gear you think we'll need. Ryan, round up Alex and Megan. We're heading out. Within minutes. The team assembled at the edge of the colony, armed with flashlights, scanners, and weapons. The 4 engineers had rigged portable seismic detectors to help locate any underground activity. As they set off into the darkness, the crunch of their boots on gravel broke the eerie silence. The stars above twinkled faintly, offering little comfort against the oppressive weight of the unknown. When they reached the rocky outcrop Ethan had described, Laura knelt to inspect the ground. She ran her hand over the dirt, feeling for inconsistencies. After a moment, she looked up. There's a slight depression here, she said, pointing to a patch of earth that seemed slightly lower than the surrounding area. Could be an entrance. Ryan stepped forward, shining his flashlight into the depression. Sure enough, a narrow hole gaped open beneath the surface, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Looks like our kid wasn't imagining things, he muttered. Daniel peered into the tunnel, his stomach twisting with unease. Let's go in, stay close, and keep your lights ready. One by one, the team descended into the darkness, the cool air of the tunnel raising goosebumps on their skin. The walls were smooth and damp, glowing faintly with an otherworldly luminescence. Strange symbols etched into the stone flickered, as if alive, pulsing gently in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. Laura paused to examine them, her breath catching in her throat. This isn't natural, she whispered. They must have built these tunnels themselves. The deeper they went, the stranger the environment became. The air grew heavier, laced with a metallic temps that made it hard to breathe. Occasionally, they heard faint clicking sounds echoing through the passages, too rhythmic to be random. Each noise sent a shiver down their spines, but they pressed on, driven by the hope of finding the missing children. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a vast cavern illuminated by glowing crystals embedded in the ceiling. The sight took their breath away. Towering stalactites dripped with iridescent liquid, casting shimmering reflections across the chamber. In the center of the room stood several large egg-shaped structures arranged in a circle. They pulsed with soft golden light, humming faintly, as though alive. But it was the creatures themselves that drew their attention. Standing along the edges of the cavern were the Vorthenstol, insectoid beings with elongated limbs and exoskeletons that gleamed like polished steel. Their multifaceted eyes glinted in the dim light, and their mandibles clicked rhythmically as they observed the intruders. Despite their unsettling appearance, they made no move to attack. Instead, they parted slightly, revealing a group of frightened children huddled together near the glowing eggs. Tears streaked their faces, but they appeared unharmed. One of the girls, clutching a stuffed animal tightly to her chest, locked eyes with Laura and whimpered, "Help us." Laura's heart ached at the sight, but she forced herself to remain calm. Stepping forward cautiously, She raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to hurt you," she said slowly, her voice steady, despite the fear clawing at her insides. "We've come to bring the children home." The Vorthons tilted their heads in unison, their bioluminescent markings shifting colors. For a moment, the tension in the air was palpable, as though the entire cavern held its breath. Then, one of the creatures stepped forward, its movements deliberate and measured. It extended a clawed limb toward Laura, emitting a series of clicks and whistles that resonated through the chamber. Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon, ready to act if necessary. But Laura held her ground, studying the creature intently. "I think it's trying to communicate," she said quietly. "What does it want?" Ryan demanded, his voice low and tense. Before Laura could respond, the Vorthon gestured toward the children, then back to the glowing eggs. Its mandibles clicked again, slower this time, almost like a question. Laura hesitated, piecing together the meaning behind the gestures. Finally, she turned to Daniel. "I don't think they're keeping the kids prisoner. They're protecting them more, maybe even caring for them." Daniel frowned, his mind struggling to process the implications. Protecting them? Why? Laura shook her head. "I'm not sure yet, but if we try to take the kids by force, they'll fight back, and we might lose them for good." The team exchanged uneasy glances, torn between their mission to retrieve the children and the realization that violence might only worsen the situation. For now, they had no choice but to trust Laura's instincts and hope that diplomacy could prevail in the face of the unknown. As the Vorthons watched silently, their glowing bodies casting eerie shadows across the cavern, the humans knew they had entered uncharted territory. Whatever happened next would shape not only their fate but also the fragile relationship between humanity and the alien species sharing this distant world. The cavern felt alive, its walls shimmering faintly, as though breathing in time with the hum of the glowing crystals above. The Vorthons loomed silently around the humans, their towering forms casting long, distorted shadows on the damp stone floor. Laura stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing to make sense of what she was seeing. The children huddled together near the pulsating eggs, their wide eyes darting between the strange creatures and the newcomers who had come to rescue them. Daniel took a cautious step forward, his hand still resting on the grip of his plasma rifle. "We need to get the kids out of here," he whispered to Ryan, keeping his voice low so as not to provoke the Vorthons. Ryan nodded, but didn't lower his weapon. "Agreed. But how do we do that without starting a fight? These things don't exactly look friendly." Laura turned to face them, her expression calm but firm. "They haven't attacked us yet. That has to mean something. Maybe they're scared too." "Scared?" Ryan scoffed under his breath. "Those things could crush us like bugs if they wanted to." "Exactly," Laura shot back. "But they haven't. That tells me there's more going on here than we understand." Daniel sighed, glancing at the children again. They were trembling, clutching each other tightly, but none of them seemed injured. One of the boys, no older than 8, locked eyes with Daniel and mouthed the word help. It was all the motivation he needed. "All right," Daniel said quietly. "Let's try talking to them first. If that doesn't work, we'll figure something else out." Laura stepped closer to the nearest Vorthon, raising her hand slowly to show she meant no harm. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay steady. She pointed to the children and then back to herself, mimicking a gesture of taking them away. The Vorthon tilted its head, its multifaceted eyes glinting in the dim light. Its mandibles clicked softly, almost like a question. "I think it understands," Laura murmured over her shoulder. "It's asking why we're here." "How can you tell?" Ryan asked skeptically. "Its body language, it's curious, not aggressive." Laura paused, thinking carefully about her next move. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small energy bar, holding it out toward the creature. "This is food. We share it with others when we care about them." The voice hesitated, its clawed limbs twitching slightly. For a moment, it seemed unsure whether to take the offering or retreat. Finally, it extended one of its long arms and gently plucked the energy bar from Laura's hand. It examined it closely, turning it over in its grasp before clicking its mandibles again. "They're intelligent," Laura breathed, her voice filled with awe. "Not just animals, actual sentient beings." Daniel frowned, watching the exchange warily. "That doesn't change the fact that they've got our kids down here." "No, it doesn't," Laura agreed. "But maybe we can reason with them, instead of fighting. Let me try to explain." She turned back to the Vorthen, pointing to herself and then to the children. "These are ours," she said slowly, enunciating each word even though she knew the creature wouldn't understand human speech. "We love them. We need them back." To her surprise, the Vorthen responded by gesturing toward the glowing eggs in the center of the chamber. It repeated the motion several times, its clicks growing louder and more insistent. Laura followed its gaze, studying the pulsating structures. They looked almost organic, like giant pods nurturing something inside. "What does it want?" Daniel asked, stepping up beside her. "I'm not sure," Laura admitted, "but I think it's trying to tell us something important." As if on cue, one of the eggs began to crack open, emitting a soft glow that grew brighter by the second. The Vorthens shifted uneasily, their bioluminescent markings flashing in rapid succession. A sudden wave of warmth washed over the group, and a faint hissing sound filled the air. From within the broken egg emerged a small, spindly creature, clearly a young Vorthen, its exoskeleton still soft and translucent. Laura gasped, realization dawning on her face. "Oh my God, they're dying." "What?" Ryan snapped, his grip tightening on his rifle. "The eggs there, their offspring," Laura explained quickly. "Look at them, their population is collapsing. They're desperate." Daniel stared at the tiny Vorthen, struggling to comprehend the implications. "So they took the kids because they think the children can help somehow," Laura finished. "Maybe they see them as replacements, or maybe they believe humans have some kind of connection to their ancestors. Either way, they're not doing this out of malice." Ryan shook his head, frustration etched across his face. "That doesn't matter. Those kids don't belong here. We can't just leave them." "I know," Laura said firmly, "but if we charge in guns blazing, we'll lose them for good. Trust me, Daniel. Give me a chance to talk to them." Daniel hesitated, torn between caution and urgency. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, but if anything goes wrong, we're pulling out with or without your permission." Laura gave him a grateful nod before turning back to the Vorthens. She knelt down slowly, placing the energy bar on the ground as a sign of goodwill. Then she pointed to the children and mimed rapping, her arms around them protectively. "Family," she said clearly. "Ours." The lead Vorthen watched her intently, its clicks slowing until they almost sounded like a rhythm. After a long pause, it gestured toward the children, then to the eggs, and finally to Laura herself. It was an invitation or perhaps a plea. Laura glanced back at Daniel, her expression uncertain but hopeful. "I think they want us to stay, at least for now." "Forget it," Ryan growled. "We're not leaving those kids down here." "We might not have a choice," Daniel said grimly. "If we push too hard, they'll fight back, and we don't know what kind of weapons they have." Laura nodded. "Just give me a little more time, please." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. "Fine, but keep it short. Every second we waste puts those kids in more danger." As the team settled into an uneasy standoff, the Vorthons continued to watch them closely, their glowing bodies casting an eerie light throughout the cavern. The children sat quietly, their fear giving way to exhaustion as the hours dragged on. Occasionally, one of the Vorthons would approach them, offering small portions of the nutrient-rich substance oozing from the crystals. To everyone's relief, the kids accepted the food without hesitation, their hunger outweighing their fear. Laura used the time to study the Vorthons more closely, noting the subtle changes in their bioluminescent patterns whenever they communicated. She realized that the colors corresponded to different emotions: blue for curiosity, green for reassurance, red for aggression. By paying attention to these signals, she began to piece together fragments of their intentions. "They're not evil," she told Daniel during a brief lull. "They're scared, just like us." Daniel rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "Even if that's true, we can't let them keep the kids. Earth Command made that clear." "I know," Laura said softly. "But maybe there's another way. If we can prove we're willing to help them, they might let the children go willingly." "And how do you propose we do that?" Ryan demanded. Laura hesitated, her mind racing. "We offer them something in return, something they value even more than the kids." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Laura glanced at the broken egg and the frail young Vorthin nestled beside it. "Their survival." The idea hung in the air like a challenge, daring them to consider the impossible. Could they really find a way to save both the children and the Vorthin? Or would their attempt at diplomacy end in disaster? For now, all they could do was wait and hope that understanding would triumph over fear. The cavern remained eerily quiet, except for the faint hum of the glowing crystals and the occasional click of the Vorthin's mandibles. Laura knelt on the damp stone floor, her hands resting lightly on her knees as she studied the creatures around her. The Vorthins had settled into a loose circle, their tall, insectoid forms casting long shadows in the dim light. They watched the humans with an intensity that bordered on unnerving, their multifaceted eyes glinting like shards of glass. Daniel stood a few feet away, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His gaze flicked between the children huddled near, the glowing eggs, and the towering aliens surrounding them. He hated feeling powerless, but he knew they couldn't risk provoking the Vorthins not yet. "How much longer do you think we can stall?" he asked Laura under his breath. Laura didn't look up. "As long as it takes," she replied softly. "If we rush this, we'll lose any chance of finding common ground." Ryan shifted uneasily beside Daniel, his hand never straying far from the grip of his plasma rifle. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Every second we waste gives them more time to figure out what we're planning." "We're not planning anything," Daniel said firmly. "Not unless we absolutely have to." Laura ignored their exchange, focusing instead on the Vorthin closest to her. It was the same one that had accepted the energy bar earlier, a gesture she hoped had planted a seed of trust. She pointed to herself, then to the children, repeating the motion several times. "Family," she said again, emphasizing the word. "Ours." The Vorthin tilted its head, its bioluminescent markings shifting from blue to green. It clicked its mandibles once, then gestured toward the eggs in the center of the chamber. Its movements were deliberate, almost instructional. "They're trying to show us something," Laura murmured, rising to her feet. She turned to Daniel. "Let me go closer. Maybe I can get a better look at those eggs." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Ryan asked sharply. "It's worth the risk," Laura insisted. Without waiting for further argument, she took a cautious step forward, keeping her hands visible to show she meant no harm. The Vorthins watched her carefully, but didn't move to block her path. When she reached the edge of the circle of eggs, she stopped and crouched down, examining one of the glowing pods up close. The surface of the egg was warm to the touch, pulsating gently, as though alive. Through the translucent shell, Laura could see the outline of a developing creature inside, smaller than the adult Vorthins, but unmistakably related. She frowned, noticing something unusual. Tiny cracks spiderwebbed across the surface, and the glow within seemed dimmer than before. "These eggs. They're dying," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "What does that mean?" Daniel asked, stepping closer. "It means their species is in trouble," Laura explained, her voice heavy with realization. "Whatever is killing these eggs is wiping out their future. That's why they took the children. They're desperate. They think the kids can somehow save them. Ryan shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. So they just grabbed random kids and brought them down here. That's insane. Not insane, Laura corrected. Desperate. Imagine if humanity was facing extinction. What wouldn't we do to survive? Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Even so, we can't let them keep the children. Earth Command made that clear. I know, Laura said, standing up. But there has to be another way. If we can help them with whatever's wrong with the eggs, maybe they'll release the kids willingly. Ryan snorted. And how exactly are we supposed to fix alien biology? Laura hesitated, her mind racing. We start by learning more about them. Let me try to communicate. She turned back to the Vorthons, pointing to the cracked egg and miming illness. Sick, she said slowly. Help. The lead Vorthon responded immediately, its body language shifting from curiosity to urgency. It clicked its mandibles rapidly, then gestured toward the eggs, and then back to Laura. The message was clear. Yes, the eggs were sick, and they wanted her help. Daniel stepped forward, his expression skeptical. You really think they'll let you examine them? We won't know unless we try, Laura said. She glanced at the Vorthon again, holding her hands out in a gesture of peace. I need tools. Medical supplies. Can you bring me some? The Vorthon hesitated, its glowing patterns flickering uncertainly. After a moment, it nodded and stepped aside, allowing Laura to return to the group. I'm going to need everything we've got, she told Daniel and Ryan as she rejoined them. Scanners, sample kits, anything that might help me analyze what's wrong with the eggs. Ryan frowned. What if this is a trap? What if they're just luring us deeper? It's a risk, Laura admitted. But if we don't take it, we'll never get the kids back. Daniel met her gaze, searching for any sign of doubt. Finding none, he nodded. All right, Alex, Megan, gather whatever equipment you can spare and bring it here. Ryan, keep an eye on the perimeter. We're not taking chances. Within minutes, the engineers returned with a portable scanner and a small case of medical tools. Laura thanked them quickly before heading back to the eggs, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she set up the equipment, the Vorthons gathered around her, their glowing bodies casting strange, shifting patterns on the walls of the cavern. Using the scanner, Laura began analyzing the composition of the eggs. The readings were unlike anything she'd ever seen, a complex blend of organic material and crystalline structures. Whatever the Vorthons were, they weren't purely biological or mechanical. They existed somewhere in between. She noted the irregularities in the eggs, structured the cracks. The fading glow compared them to data stored in the scanner's database. After what felt like hours, she finally spoke. It's a disease, she said, her voice tinged with both relief and concern. Some kind of infection attacking the embryos. If we don't stop it, none of these eggs will survive. Can you cure it? Daniel asked, leaning over her shoulder. I don't know yet, Laura admitted, but I can try. I'll need samples of the infected tissue to create an antidote. The lead Vorthon clicked loudly, its mandibles snapping together in what Laura interpreted as approval. It gestured toward one of the cracked eggs, inviting her to take what she needed. Laura hesitated, glancing at Daniel. This is our chance. If I can find a treatment, maybe they'll let the kids go. Daniel nodded grimly. Do it. But stay alert. We don't know how they'll react if this doesn't work. With trembling hands, Laura used a sterile scalpel to extract a small fragment of the egg's outer shell. The Vorthons watched silently, their glowing bodies pulsing in rhythm with the faint hum of the crystals above. Once she had the sample, she retreated to the edge of the cavern to begin testing potential treatments. As the hours dragged on, the tension in the air grew palpable. The children sat quietly, their fear giving way to exhaustion. Occasionally, one of the Vorthons would approach them, offering food or water extracted from the glowing crystals. To everyone's relief, the kids accepted the offerings without resistance, their hunger outweighing their fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Laura looked up from her makeshift lab. Her face was pale, but determined. "I think I've found something," she said, holding up a vial filled with a shimmering liquid. "It's not perfect, but it should stabilize the embryos long enough for them to develop." Daniel exchanged a glance with Ryan, who shrugged reluctantly. "Worth a shot," he muttered. Laura approached the lead Vorthan, holding out the vial cautiously. "This might help," she said, knowing the creature wouldn't understand her words but hoping her tone conveyed sincerity. "Please, let me try." The Vorthan studied the vial for a moment, its glowing patterns shifting from uncertainty to resolve. Finally, it nodded and gestured toward the eggs, inviting her to proceed. With steady hands, Laura administered the treatment, injecting the shimmering liquid into each of the infected eggs. The process was slow and painstaking, but she worked methodically, refusing to give in to doubt or fatigue. As she finished the last egg, a soft glow spread through the chamber, brighter and steadier than before. The Vorthans clicked their mandibles in unison, their bodies lighting up in waves of green and gold. For the first time since entering the cavern, they seemed genuinely pleased. Laura turned to Daniel, her face breaking into a tired but triumphant smile. "It worked," she said softly. "They're stabilizing." Daniel let out a long breath, his shoulders sagging with relief. "Good work. Now, about the kids." Before he could finish, the lead Vorthon stepped forward, its movements deliberate and measured. It gestured toward the children, then toward the exit of the cavern. Its message was clear. The kids were free to leave. Laura's eyes widened with surprise. "They're letting them go." Daniel nodded, turning to Ryan. "Get the kids ready. We're getting out of here." As the team gathered the children and prepared to leave, Laura lingered behind for a moment, meeting the gaze of the lead voice. "Thank you," she said quietly, even though she knew it couldn't understand her. "We'll find a way to help your people." The Vorthan clicked softly, its glowing patterns shifting to a warm golden hue. Whether it was gratitude or acceptance, Laura couldn't say. But as she turned to follow the others out of the cavern, she felt a flicker of hope, a fragile but undeniable connection forged in the depths of an alien world. The journey back to the surface felt like stepping out of a dream and into reality. The cool night air of Elysiumine greeted the group as they emerged from the tunnel, the children clinging tightly to Daniel, Laura, and Ryan. Their faces were streaked with dirt and tears, but their eyes sparkled with relief at seeing the familiar outlines of the colony buildings in the distance. Behind them, the entrance to the underground cavern remained silent, the Vorthans having withdrawn deeper into their tunnels after releasing the children. As they approached the settlement, word spread quickly among the colonists. Parents rushed forward, calling out names and embracing their children with sobs of joy. Ethan, the boy who had first reported seeing the creatures, ran into his mother's arms, burying his face in her shoulder as she held him close. For a moment, the weight of fear that had hung over the colonies seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. But not everyone shared in the relief. Jake Miller, a burly farmer with a gruff demeanor, stood near the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His face was red with anger, and his voice carried across the gathering as he shouted, "What were you thinking, bringing those things here? They could have killed our kids." Daniel turned to face him, his expression calm but firm. "Those creatures didn't hurt the children. If anything, they were trying to protect them. Protect them." Jake spat, taking a step closer. "They took them away from us." "You call that protection?" "They thought they had no choice," Laura interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Daniel. Her tone was measured, but there was steel beneath her words. "Their species is dying. They believed the children could help save them." Jake scoffed, shaking his head. "That's insane. We don't owe them anything. Those monsters should have been stopped before they even got close to this colony. Ryan clenched his fists, his patience wearing thin. You want to talk about stopping them? You try going up against creatures like that without knowing what you're dealing with. Trust me, it wouldn't have ended well for anyone. Before Jake could respond, Carl Harris, the colony's mayor, stepped between them, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. Enough, he said firmly. We've got the kids back safe. Let's focus on keeping them that way. Daniel nodded in agreement. Carl's right. We need to stay vigilant. But we also can't ignore what just happened down there. Those creatures Vorthons, they're intelligent, and they're scared. If we provoke them, they'll fight back. Hard. The crowd fell. Silent. The gravity of Daniel's words sinking in. No one wanted to admit it, but they all knew he was right. The Vorthons had shown restraint, even when faced with armed humans in their territory. Pushing them too far could lead to disaster. Laura glanced at the group of settlers, her gaze lingering on Jake. We have a chance to avoid conflict, she said softly. If we work together, maybe we can find a way to help them. It's not just about us, it's about coexisting. Jake snorted, turning away. Coexist with those things. Don't make me laugh. Despite his hostility, others in the crowd murmured, in agreement with Laura's words. A young woman holding her daughter's hand spoke up hesitantly. She's right. What if they come back? What if they decide we're still a threat? Daniel looked at her, his expression thoughtful. That's why we need to be smart about this. Earth Command gave us clear orders. Harm a human child, and death will follow. But the Vorthons didn't harm anyone. Not really. If we act rashly now, we risk undoing everything we've worked for. Carl nodded slowly, his voice carrying authority despite the fatigue etched into his face. All right, so what do we do? Next, we keep the lines of communication open, Laura suggested. I gave them a treatment for their eggs, but it's only temporary. If we can figure out a permanent solution, we might earn their trust and prevent future incidents. Daniel added, in the meantime, we set up patrols around the colony. Not to attack, but to monitor their movements. If they come near again, we'll know. The plan wasn't perfect, but it was enough to ease some of the tension in the air. As the settlers dispersed, returning to their homes with their children safely in tow, the team regrouped near the command center. The adrenaline of the rescue mission was beginning to wear off, leaving behind exhaustion and unease. Megan Scott, one of the engineers, broke the silence. Do you think they'll leave us alone now? I don't know, Daniel admitted, leaning against the table. But I do know one thing. We can't let our guard down. Not yet. Ryan paced back and forth, his boots scuffing against the dusty ground. Something tells me Jake isn't going to let this go. He looked ready to start a war. He's not the only one, Alex Carter chimed in, adjusting the strap of his scanner bag. Some of the settlers are spooked. They won't forgive, easily. Laura sighed, running a hand through her curly auburn hair. Fear makes people do irrational things. We need to show them that cooperation is better than conflict. Easier said than done, Daniel thought, watching the distant lights of the colony flicker in the darkness. He trusted his team, but the settlers were another matter entirely. Convincing them to see the Vorthons as more than monsters would take time and patience they might not have. As the hours passed, the team reviewed their findings from the cavern, piecing together what they knew about the Vorthons. Laura explained how the infection affecting the eggs seemed to be spreading rapidly, likely caused by some environmental factor unique to Elysium-9. It's possible their ecosystem is collapsing, she said, pointing to data on her tablet. If that's true, it's not just their survival at stake, it's the entire planet. Daniel frowned, rubbing his temples. So we're looking at a bigger problem than we realized. Exactly, Laura replied. And if we don't address it soon, we could end up facing the same issues ourselves. The implications weighed heavily on the group. Elysium-9 was humanity's foothold in this part of space, a lifeline for future expansion. If the planet became uninhabitable, countless lives would be affected. By dawn, the team had formulated a tentative plan. Laura would continue analyzing samples from the eggs, searching for a long-term cure. Meanwhile, Daniel and Ryan would organize scouting missions to map the Vorthan's tunnel network, ensuring they could track any potential threats. Megan and Alex volunteered to assist Laura, using their engineering skills to build specialized equipment for her research. As the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the colony began to stir. Children played cautiously under the watchful eyes of their parents, while farmers tended to crops that stretched toward the alien sun. Life went on, but the shadow of uncertainty lingered. Later that morning, Jake Miller appeared outside the command center, flanked by a small group of settlers. His face was grim, and his voice carried an edge of defiance. "We're not waiting around for those things to come back," he declared, addressing Daniel directly. "Some of us are heading out tonight. We're going to destroy their tunnels before they get the chance to attack us." Daniel straightened, his expression hardening. "You're making a mistake, Jake. Attacking them will only escalate things, and doing nothing will get us killed." Jake shot back, his voice rising. "You saw what they're capable of, or did you forget?" "I haven't forgotten," Daniel said evenly. "But violence isn't the answer. If you go down there, you'll be putting everyone at risk, including your own family." Jake hesitated, glancing at the settlers behind him. For a moment, it seemed like he might back down. Then he shook his head, his jaw tightening. "We'll see who's right about this. Stay out of our way." With that, he turned and walked away, his followers trailing after him. The air felt heavier as they disappeared into the distance, their intentions clear. Laura looked at Daniel, her eyes filled with concern. "What are we going to do?" Daniel exhaled slowly, his mind racing. "We stopped them, somehow." But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be easy. The fragile peace they'd fought so hard to achieve was already beginning to unravel, and the consequences could be catastrophic.